I found the package of rotting chicken breasts on my doorstep 3 days after they were supposed to arrive. And that was when I knew something had gone seriously wrong with my grocery deliveries. My name is Quentin Zimmerman, and I had just moved into the Meadowbrook Estates development in Scottsdale, Arizona about 2 months earlier. The place seemed perfect at first. Modern townhomes, well-maintained common areas, and reasonable HOA fees. I worked from home as a software developer, which meant I relied heavily on grocery delivery services to save time. Between debugging code and attending virtual meetings, running to the store felt like an unnecessary interruption to my workflow. The first time a delivery went missing, I chalked it up to driver error. The grocery app showed the order as delivered, complete with a photo of bags sitting on a doorstep, but the image quality was too grainy to make out the house number. I contacted customer service, got a refund, and ordered again. When it happened a second time the following week, I started to get suspicious. The third time, with those rotting chicken breasts baking in the Arizona sun, I knew someone was stealing my groceries. I called the delivery service, and this time I was more insistent. The customer service representative, a patient woman named Linda, pulled up my account history and noticed the pattern. 3 missing deliveries in 3 weeks, all marked as delivered with photographic proof. She suggested I might want to contact my HOA about package theft in the neighborhood. That suggestion made my stomach sink. I had already had one run-in with the HOA president, a woman named Brenda Hutchins, who seemed to live for finding violations in the neighborhood. She had sent me a formal letter 2 weeks after I moved in because my trash cans were visible from the street after 6 p.m. on a non-collection day. Never mind that I had gotten home from a rare in-person meeting at 7 and brought them in immediately. The fine was $50, and she had hand-delivered the notice with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Still, I figured I should at least try the official channels first. I sent an email to the HOA board explaining the situation and asking if there had been any reports of package theft in the community. Brenda responded within an hour, which should have been my first warning sign that she had way too much time on her hands. Her email was curt and dismissive. She informed me that Meadowbrook Estates had never had issues with theft, suggested that I was probably giving drivers the wrong address, and recommended that I take personal responsibility for ensuring deliveries arrive correctly. The condescending tone practically dripped off my computer screen. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I ordered another grocery delivery for the following Tuesday afternoon, timing it for when I would be home and could watch for the driver. I also set up a temporary security camera on my front porch using an old laptop and webcam software. It was not the most sophisticated system, but it would give me a view of my doorstep. Tuesday arrived, and I tracked my delivery obsessively through the app. The driver was making good time, moving through the neighborhood according to the GPS. I positioned myself near my front window, laptop open to the camera feed, ready to intercept any theft in progress. At 2:15 p.m., the delivery van pulled up to my townhouse. I watched the driver, a young guy in his 20s with a neat ponytail, grab 3 bags from the back and walk up to my door. He set them down carefully, took the required photo, and headed back to his van. So far, so good. I was about to open my door when I saw movement on the camera feed. A woman in designer athleisure wear, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, was walking briskly across the lawn from the direction of the community management office. My heart started pounding as I recognized Brenda Hutchins. I watched through the window as she approached my doorstep, looked around in an exaggerated casual manner, then picked up all 3 bags and walked away with them. She did not even hurry, just strolled back toward the direction she had come from like she owned the place. Which, in a sense, she probably thought she did. I stood there for a moment, completely stunned. The HOA president was stealing my groceries. Not some random porch pirate, not a confused delivery driver, but the woman who was supposed to be maintaining order and safety in the community was actively committing theft against residents. I immediately saved the camera footage and backed it up to 3 different locations: my external hard drive, my cloud storage, and I even emailed it to myself. Then I sat down and tried to figure out what to do next. Confronting Brenda directly seemed like a terrible idea. She clearly had no problem lying to my face and wielding her HOA authority like a weapon. Going to the other board members might not work either, since she had probably cultivated relationships with them over the years. I decided to order another delivery and see if the pattern repeated. If this was ongoing behavior, I needed multiple instances documented. Plus, I wanted to see if I could get better footage. I invested in an actual doorbell camera, one of those Ring-style devices that had excellent video quality and cloud backup. I installed it that evening, positioning it to capture not just my doorstep, but a good portion of the walkway leading up to my door. Thursday afternoon, I placed another order. This time I made sure to include some expensive items: organic steaks, premium coffee, specialty cheeses. If I was going to be out the money anyway, I might as well make the evidence more compelling. The total came to almost $200. The delivery arrived at 4 p.m. Different driver this time, an older woman who handled the bags with care. She placed them neatly on my doorstep, took her photo, and left. I was sitting at my desk, pretending to work while actually watching the Ring app on my phone. 7 minutes later, Brenda appeared again. This time the footage was crystal clear, full color with audio. I could see her face perfectly as she approached my door, could hear her humming some tune as she bent down to pick up the bags. She actually looked inside one of them, smiled, and then carried them away. The audacity was breathtaking. I now had 2 clear instances of theft on video. I decided it was time to escalate. I compiled all the footage, along with timestamps and the receipts from my orders, and I called the Scottsdale Police Department's non-emergency line. The officer who took my call was professional, but seemed slightly amused when I explained that the HOA president was stealing my groceries. He took down all the information and told me someone would be in touch. I got the impression that this was probably the most interesting call he had received all day. 2 days later, Officer Martinez showed up at my door. He was in his early 40s, with graying hair at his temples and the kind of weathered face that suggested he had seen everything. I invited him in and showed him all the footage on my laptop. He watched both videos twice, taking notes. When the second video finished, he looked at me and said, "This is definitely theft. The video evidence is clear. How much total would you say she has stolen?" I pulled up my spreadsheets. Between the 5 confirmed stolen deliveries, I had lost about $650 worth of groceries, plus the $50 HOA fine that now felt like adding insult to injury. Officer Martinez wrote everything down. "Here is what I can do," he said. "This is technically petty theft since each individual incident is under $1,000, but the cumulative amount and the pattern of behavior make it more serious. I am going to have a conversation with Miss Hutchins. Given her position in the community, I would think she would want to resolve this quietly, but you also have the right to press charges." I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted to see Brenda arrested and perp walked out of the neighborhood. But another part of me, the part that still had to live here, worried about the consequences of making such a powerful enemy. I want to press charges, I said finally, but I also want to pursue this civilly. She cost me money, time, and a lot of stress. Plus, I want there to be a record of this in case she is doing it to other people. Officer Martinez nodded approvingly. Good thinking. Let me go talk to her first, get her side of the story. I will be in touch. He left, and I tried to go back to work, but concentration was impossible. I kept refreshing my Ring app, half expecting to see police cars descending on the HOA office. Nothing happened for hours. Finally, around 7 p.m., Officer Martinez called me. That was interesting, he said, and I could hear the tension in his voice. Miss Hutchins denied everything at first. Said she had never touched your deliveries, suggested you were making it up to harass her because she had cited you for an HOA violation. When I showed her the video evidence, she changed her story. Now she claims she was securing packages for residents because of concerns about theft in the neighborhood. That is complete nonsense, I said, my voice rising. She never contacted me about the packages. She never tried to return them. And how do you explain her looking through the bags and smiling? She was stealing them for herself. I agree, Officer Martinez said. Her explanation does not hold water. I have informed her that you are pressing charges. She will need to appear in court. I am also writing up a report that you can use for civil proceedings. Do you have a lawyer? I did not, but I told him I would get one. After we hung up, I spent the next 2 hours researching attorneys in Scottsdale who handled theft and small claims cases. I found a firm that specialized in property crimes and civil litigation, and I sent them an email detailing everything that had happened, attaching all my evidence. The next morning, I got a call from an attorney named Jessica Morneau. She sounded young but sharp, asking pointed questions about the timeline, the evidence, and my interactions with Brenda. After about 20 minutes, she said, "Mr. Zimmerman, you have an excellent case. The video evidence is damning, and the fact that she is the HOA president actually works in your favor. It shows abuse of position and a breach of fiduciary duty to the community. I think we can get you full restitution, possibly punitive damages, and we might even be able to force her removal from the HOA board." Music to my ears. We scheduled an in-person meeting for the next day to go over everything in detail and start building the case. That evening, I got my first taste of retaliation. There was a formal notice taped to my door when I went to get my mail. It was from the HOA, signed by Brenda Hutchins, informing me that I had violated the community guidelines by installing a doorbell camera without prior architectural approval. The fine was $250, and I had 10 days to remove the camera or face additional penalties. I took a photo of the notice and immediately emailed it to Jessica Morneau with the subject line, Exhibit A, Retaliation. She responded within minutes. "Do not remove the camera. This is clearly retaliation for your theft complaint. We will include this in our filing." I also posted in the Meadowbrook Estates community Facebook group, which I had mostly ignored up until that point. I kept it vague but pointed. Has anyone else been required to get architectural approval for doorbell cameras? I just got cited for mine and wanted to know if this is standard enforcement or selective. The responses started flooding in within minutes. Out of 37 households in the development, at least 12 had doorbell cameras. None of them had gotten architectural approval. Several people expressed surprise that approval was even required. A few mentioned they had Ring or Nest cameras and had never heard a word from the HOA about them. One comment in particular caught my attention. It was from a guy named Tom who lived 3 streets over. He wrote, "Funny you mention this. My grocery deliveries kept disappearing a few months ago. I switched to picking up my orders instead because I figured we had a package thief in the neighborhood. Never caught who it was. I messaged Tom privately and asked if he wanted to talk. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Scottsdale the next morning before my meeting with Jessica. Tom was in his 50s, a friendly guy with an easy smile who worked in construction. He told me he had moved to Meadowbrook Estates about 8 months ago and loved everything about it except the HOA president. "She is on a power trip," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "I've gotten fined for the weirdest things. My front door wreath was the wrong shade of green. My car was parked facing the wrong direction in my own driveway. It is like she sits around with the HOA bylaws trying to find things to nail people for." "Did you report the missing deliveries?" I asked. I mentioned it at an HOA meeting once. Brenda said it was probably driver error and that I should take it up with the delivery service. She made me feel like I was wasting everyone's time. He paused, looking thoughtful. "You think she was the one taking them?" I told him the whole story, including the video evidence. Tom's expression went from surprise to anger to something like vindication. I knew there was something off about her. How many packages did I lose? I had to have lost at least 4 or 5 orders. "Do you have room for another plaintiff in your lawsuit?" I gave him Jessica Mornow's contact information and suggested he reach out. If Brenda had been doing this to multiple residents, the case became even stronger. My meeting with Jessica went smoothly. She had already started drafting the civil complaint, which would seek restitution for the stolen goods, compensation for my time and stress, punitive damages for the abuse of position, and a request for a restraining order preventing Brenda from any further retaliation. She also planned to notify the HOA board and request an emergency meeting to address Brenda's conduct. "The criminal case will take months to work through the system," Jessica explained, "but we can move faster on the civil side. I am going to file this by end of week. Once Brenda is served, she will have 30 days to respond. In the meantime, document everything. Every interaction, every notice, every fine. If she so much as looks at you funny, I want to know about it." Tom contacted Jessica that same afternoon, and she agreed to represent him as well. With 2 victims and a clear pattern of behavior, the case became much more compelling. The HOA board received Jessica's letter 3 days later. It outlined the allegations against Brenda, included still frames from the video evidence, and requested an immediate investigation. The letter also noted that criminal charges had been filed and that civil litigation was pending. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that the board held an emergency meeting that weekend. I was not invited, which was probably for the best. Brenda reportedly showed up with her own lawyer and spent 2 hours insisting she had done nothing wrong. The other board members, apparently uncomfortable with the video evidence and the potential liability to the HOA, voted to place her on temporary leave pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. Brenda was furious. I know this because she came to my house Monday evening and pounded on my door. I saw her through the Ring camera and immediately started recording on my phone as well. Then I opened the door but stayed behind my security screen. "You are destroying my reputation over a misunderstanding," she said, her face flushed. "I was trying to help the neighborhood. Someone needed to secure those packages." "You stole my property, Brenda," I said calmly, "on camera, multiple times. You never contacted me, you never tried to return anything, and you lied to the police about it." "I am going to fight this," she said, her voice rising. "I am going to sue you for defamation. I am going to make sure everyone knows what a liar you are." "I have video evidence," I reminded her. "Multiple instances. You should probably talk to your lawyer before you make any more threats." She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and stormed off. I immediately sent the footage to Jessica, who called me within the hour. "That was incredibly stupid of her," Jessica said, and she sounded almost gleeful. "That is witness intimidation and harassment. I am filing for an emergency restraining order tomorrow morning. She just made our case even stronger." The temporary restraining order was granted within 48 hours. Brenda was ordered to stay at least 100 feet away from me and Tom, and she was prohibited from any contact, direct or indirect. The HOA board received a copy of the order, and I heard they held another meeting to discuss the situation. This time, they voted to suspend Brenda from the board entirely, not just put her on leave. The neighborhood Facebook group exploded with speculation and gossip. I stayed out of it mostly, just posting a simple statement that I had experienced theft and was pursuing legal remedies, and that I could not comment further on pending litigation. But plenty of other people had opinions. The community split into camps. Those who thought Brenda had been too aggressive all along and were glad to see her taken down, and those who thought I was overreacting and destroying a dedicated volunteer's life over some groceries. The preliminary hearing for the criminal case was scheduled for late March. Jessica advised me to be present even though I probably would not need to testify. She wanted the judge to see me as a real person, not just a name on paperwork. The courthouse in Scottsdale was busy that morning. I arrived early, wearing a suit that I had not put on since my last job interview. Jessica met me in the lobby, looking professional in a charcoal gray pantsuit. Tom showed up a few minutes later, equally dressed up, and we all headed to the courtroom together. Brenda was already there with her attorney, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit who kept whispering to her. She saw us come in and looked away quickly, her jaw tight. The hearing was brief. The prosecutor, a tired-looking woman with a stack of folders, presented the video evidence and outlined the charges. 5 counts of petty theft with a cumulative value exceeding $600. Brenda's attorney argued that this was a misunderstanding, that his client had been trying to protect packages from theft, and that she had every intention of returning the items to their rightful owners. The judge, an older man with reading glasses perched on his nose, watched the video clips without expression. When they finished, he looked at Brenda's attorney and said, "Counsel, your client is seen on video removing items from a resident's doorstep without permission, looking through the contents and walking away with them. She made no effort to contact the resident or return the items. That is textbook theft. Bind over for trial." Brenda's face went pale. Her attorney tried to argue for a plea deal on the spot, but the judge was not interested. Trial was set for June. With the criminal case moving forward, Jessica shifted focus to the civil suit. She filed the complaint in early April, seeking $25,000 in damages. That number seemed high to me at first, but Jessica broke it down. $650 for Tom's stolen groceries, another $650 for mine, compensation for our time and stress, and punitive damages designed to send a message that abuse of HOA power would not be tolerated. Brenda's attorney filed a response that basically denied everything and claimed qualified immunity based on her role as HOA president. Jessica laughed when she read it. "They are arguing she was acting in her official capacity when she stole your groceries. That is not the defense they think it is." Discovery began, which meant both sides could request documents and evidence from each other. Jessica subpoenaed Brenda's financial records, phone records, and emails. What came back was fascinating and disturbing. Brenda's credit card statements showed purchases at high-end grocery stores totaling thousands of dollars over the past year, but when cross-referenced with her shopping habits, there were gaps. Weeks would go by with minimal grocery purchases, then sudden spikes. The pattern coincided with delivery schedules in the neighborhood. Even more damning, Jessica found emails between Brenda and her sister in Tucson. In one exchange from February, Brenda wrote, "You would not believe the fancy food people in this neighborhood order. I got my hands on some amazing steaks last week, probably $70 worth. They just leave them sitting on doorsteps like it is nothing." Her sister had responded, "Be careful, someone is going to catch you eventually." Brenda replied, "These tech people are clueless. They barely leave their houses. By the time they realize something is missing, there is no proof." Jessica was practically vibrating with excitement when she showed me the emails. "This is premeditation. This is consciousness of guilt. This is a prosecutor's dream evidence." She immediately forwarded everything to the district attorney's office. Within a week, the charges against Brenda were upgraded. Instead of 5 counts of petty theft, she now faced grand theft charges based on the cumulative value and the clear pattern of intentional, ongoing criminal behavior. The new charges carried a potential sentence of up to 3 years in prison. I almost felt bad for Brenda. Almost. But then, I remembered the condescending emails, the retaliatory fines, her showing up at my door to threaten me, and the sympathy evaporated. The HOA board, meanwhile, had voted to permanently remove Brenda from her position. They sent out a letter to all residents explaining that there had been conduct incompatible with the duties of an HOA board member, and that new elections would be held in May. The letter was carefully worded to avoid legal liability, but everyone in the neighborhood knew what had happened. Tom and I were both approached about running for the board. We declined. Neither of us wanted to deal with the politics and drama. Instead, a retired teacher named Alina got elected president, and she immediately set about reforming some of Brenda's more ridiculous policies. The architectural approval process was streamlined, fines were reduced for minor violations, and there was a general sense that maybe the HOA could be a force for good rather than a petty dictatorship. The civil trial was scheduled for late May, about 3 weeks before the criminal trial. Jessica explained that we would probably settle before going to court, but we needed to prepare as if we were going all the way. 2 weeks before trial, Brenda's attorney called Jessica and asked for a settlement conference. We met at Jessica's office on a Tuesday morning. Brenda was there with her lawyer, looking diminished somehow. The confident, aggressive woman who had ruled the HOA was gone, replaced by someone who looked exhausted and scared. Her attorney opened with a lowball offer, $5,000 total, split between Tom and me in exchange for dropping the civil suit. Jessica did not even dignify it with a response. She laid out all the evidence again, including the emails to Brenda's sister, and explained that we were prepared to go to trial and seek the full $25,000 plus legal fees. Brenda's attorney asked for a moment alone with his client. They stepped out into the hallway and we could hear raised voices. When they came back, Brenda looked like she had been crying. $15,000, her attorney said. That is the best we can do. Jessica looked at Tom and me. We had discussed this beforehand. We nodded. $20,000, Jessica countered, plus a formal written apology to both my clients to be posted in the community newsletter and the neighborhood Facebook group. And Miss Hutchins agrees to never hold any position of authority in any HOA, property management company, or similar organization ever again. Brenda's attorney started to object, but Brenda put her hand on his arm. "Fine," she said, her voice hoarse. I will pay it. Just make this end. We hammered out the settlement agreement over the next 2 hours. $20,000 to be split evenly between Tom and me. A formal apology acknowledging the theft and abuse of her position. And the clause about never holding HOA authority again, which Jessica insisted on as a matter of public safety. The settlement was finalized a week later. $10,000 appeared in my bank account, along with a scanned copy of Brenda's apology. It was terse and clearly written by her lawyer, but it acknowledged what she had done and expressed regret for the harm caused. Tom and I met for coffee to celebrate. He was planning to put his settlement money toward a vacation to Hawaii. I was thinking about upgrading my home office setup, maybe getting a standing desk and a better monitor. You think she learned anything? Tom asked, staring into his latte. I considered the question. I think she learned not to get caught. Whether she understands why what she did was wrong, I honestly do not know. The criminal trial was still pending, scheduled for mid-June. The settlement of the civil case did not affect the criminal charges, which was important. Jessica had made sure we did not sign anything that would prevent us from testifying or cooperating with the prosecution. The district attorney's office contacted me in early June to prepare for trial. They wanted to do a practice session, have me walk through the timeline and my testimony. The prosecutor handling the case was the same woman from the preliminary hearing, but she seemed more energized now, more focused. This case matters, she told me during our prep session. Not just because of what Miss Hutchins did to you and Mr. Harrison, but because she abused a position of trust. HOA board members have real power over people's lives. They can fine you. They can put liens on your property. They can make your life miserable. When someone in that position commits crimes against the people they are supposed to serve, we take it very seriously. The trial began on June 14th. The courthouse was less crowded this time, probably because it was midsummer and many people were on vacation. I took the stand on the second day and walked the jury through everything. Moving into the neighborhood, the missing deliveries, my attempts to resolve things through proper channels, and finally, installing the camera and catching Brenda in the act. The prosecutor played the video footage for the jury. You could see several jurors react, shaking their heads or looking disgusted. One older woman in the front row actually gasped when the video showed Brenda looking through the grocery bags and smiling. Brenda's attorney tried to poke holes in my testimony during cross-examination. He suggested I had edited the videos, that the timestamps could have been manipulated, that I might have had a personal vendetta against his client because of the HOA fine. But it all fell flat. The evidence was too clear, and Jessica had coached me well on staying calm and factual in my responses. Tom testified after me, providing similar details about his own missing deliveries and the frustration of not knowing who was responsible. The prosecutor also called the grocery delivery drivers as witnesses. The young guy with the ponytail clearly remembered delivering to my address and confirmed he had placed the bags directly on my doorstep. The fact that someone had taken them minutes later was not something he could explain any other way than theft. The defense's case was weak. Brenda took the stand and tried to maintain that she had been securing packages for residents, that she had intended to contact everyone and return their items, and that the whole thing was a tragic misunderstanding. But under cross-examination, the prosecutor eviscerated her. Miss Hutchins, in your email to your sister on February 8th, you wrote, and I quote, "I got my hands on some amazing steaks last week, probably $70 worth. Does that sound like you were planning to return them?" Brenda stammered, her face flushing. That was taken out of context. What context would make that statement appropriate for someone who claims they were just securing packages for residents? No answer. Miss Hutchins, did you ever contact Mr. Zimmerman or Mr. Harrison to let them know you had their groceries? I was going to, but that is a yes or no question. Did you ever contact them? No. Did you ever attempt to return any of the stolen items? They were perishable. They would have, yes or no, Miss Hutchins. No. The prosecution rested after 3 days. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they came back, the verdict was guilty on all counts. Brenda's sentencing was scheduled for August. In the meantime, she was released on her own recognizance, though the judge warned her that any further violations of the law would result in immediate incarceration. The neighborhood reaction was mixed. Some people felt vindicated, believing Brenda had gotten what she deserved. Others thought the whole thing was blown out of proportion, that we had ruined a woman's life over some groceries. I tried not to pay attention to either camp. I had done what I needed to do to protect myself and hold someone accountable for criminal behavior. Eleanor, the new HOA president, reached out to me personally to apologize on behalf of the board. She said they were implementing new oversight procedures and checks on board authority to prevent anything like this from happening again. I appreciated the gesture, even if I was skeptical about how much would actually change. The sentencing hearing in August was anticlimactic. Brenda's attorney argued for probation, pointing to her lack of prior criminal record and her otherwise good standing in the community. The prosecutor pushed for jail time, emphasizing the breach of trust and the premeditated nature of the crimes. The judge split the difference. Brenda was sentenced to 1 year in county jail, with 6 months suspended, meaning she would serve 6 months if she stayed out of trouble. She was also ordered to pay restitution directly to the court to cover any remaining costs that the civil settlement had not addressed, and she would be on probation for 3 years after her release. Brenda did not look at Tom or me as she was led out of the courtroom. Her shoulders were slumped, and she moved like someone decades older than her actual age. I felt a strange mix of emotions watching her go. Relief that it was finally over, satisfaction that justice had been served, but also a kind of sadness that it had come to this. Brenda had wielded power badly and made criminal choices, but she was still a person whose life had just been irrevocably changed. Tom and I went out for lunch after the sentencing. We sat at an outdoor patio at a restaurant in Old Town Scottsdale, watching tourists wander by, and talked about everything except the trial. "What are you going to do with your settlement money?" Tom asked eventually. "I bought a new desk and a really nice ergonomic chair," I said. "And I am thinking about taking a trip somewhere. Maybe Colorado, do some hiking, get out of the heat for a while." "Hawaii was amazing," Tom said. "I highly recommend it. Best decision I have made in years." We finished lunch and said our goodbyes. Tom had become a friend through this whole ordeal, which was an unexpected silver lining. We still get together every few weeks to grab coffee or watch a basketball game. Life in Meadowbrook Estates slowly returned to normal. Eleanor proved to be a reasonable and fair HOA president. The architectural approval process became sensible. Fines were issued only for legitimate violations, and there was a general sense that the neighborhood was being managed for the benefit of residents, rather than as a power trip for the board. My grocery deliveries arrived without incident. I kept the Ring camera up, despite having gotten architectural approval after the fact, just in case. But nothing ever went missing again. I ran into Brenda's sister once at a Whole Foods in Scottsdale about 6 months after the sentencing. She recognized me and looked like she wanted to say something, but then thought better of it and turned down a different aisle. I did not follow her. Whatever she had to say, I did not need to hear it. Brenda was released from jail after serving 4 months, getting out early for good behavior. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved to Tucson to live with that same sister, away from Scottsdale and the scene of her crimes. I hoped she was getting her life together, but honestly, I tried not to think about her much. The whole experience taught me some important lessons about standing up for yourself and not letting people in authority abuse their power. It would have been easy to just accept the missing deliveries, to write them off as the cost of convenience, or to be intimidated by Brenda's position in the HOA. But I am glad I did not. I am glad I gathered evidence, sought legal help, and followed through even when it got uncomfortable. Jessica Morneau became my go-to attorney for everything. When I had a contract dispute with a client a year later, she was the first person I called. She handled it swiftly and professionally, and we got a fair settlement without going to court. Tom ended up running for the HOA board 2 years later, despite his earlier reluctance. He said the experience with Brenda had shown him how important it was to have good people in those positions. He won easily and has been a voice of reason on the board ever since. As for me, I continued working from home, debugging code and attending virtual meetings, getting my groceries delivered without drama. My doorbell camera captured nothing more interesting than the occasional curious cat or misdelivered Amazon package meant for a neighbor. The Meadowbrook Estates community Facebook group eventually moved on from discussing Brenda's crimes to more typical HOA concerns: pool maintenance schedules, landscape improvements, and debates about whether the annual holiday decorating contest should be extended to include Hanukkah displays in addition to Christmas. The answer was yes, obviously, and Alina made sure it happened. I thought about writing a review of the neighborhood on some real estate website, warning potential buyers about the HOA drama, but ultimately decided against it. The problems had been with one specific person, not the community as a whole. And under new leadership, Meadowbrook Estates was actually a pretty nice place to live. One afternoon in October, almost 2 years after the whole ordeal began, I was working at my new standing desk when I got an email notification. It was from a local news website that I occasionally raid. The headline caught my attention: "Former HOA president files lawsuit against city over arrest records." I clicked through, curious despite myself. The article explained that Brenda Hutchins was suing the city of Scottsdale, arguing that the media attention around her arrest and trial had violated her privacy and destroyed her reputation. She was seeking damages and demanding that all records be sealed. I read the whole thing with a growing sense of disbelief. Even after everything, even after admitting guilt in the civil settlement and being convicted in criminal court, Brenda still could not accept responsibility. She was still looking for someone else to blame, still convinced that she was the victim. I forwarded the article to Jessica with a short message. "Can you believe this?" she replied within minutes. "The lawsuit will get thrown out. You cannot sue a city for publicizing your own criminal conviction, but it tells you everything you need to know about her mindset." Jessica was right. The lawsuit was dismissed 3 months later, with the judge writing a scathing opinion about frivolous litigation and the importance of public criminal records. Brenda was ordered to pay the city's legal fees, which I am sure did not help her financial situation. After that, I stopped following what happened to Brenda Hutchins. She had taken up enough of my time and mental energy. I was ready to move on completely. Life settled into a comfortable routine. Work was going well. I had made some good friends in the neighborhood, and my grocery deliveries arrived safely and securely. The Ring camera became just another piece of home technology, something I checked occasionally but mostly forgot about. 3 years after the initial theft, I was offered a promotion that would require relocating to Austin, Texas. It was a great opportunity, and I was ready for a change of scenery. I put my townhouse in Meadowbrook Estates on the market and started packing. The house sold quickly, and the new owners seemed nice. A young couple with a baby, excited about the community amenities and the good schools nearby. During the final walkthrough, the wife asked me about the HOA. "How is the homeowners association here? Are they reasonable?" I smiled. "The current board is great, very reasonable, responsive, and they actually work for the residents. The HOA president, Alina, is fantastic. You will be in good hands." I did not mention Brenda Hutchins. That story was not mine to tell anymore, and besides, it was history. The new owners deserved to start fresh, to see Meadowbrook Estates for what it had become rather than what it had been. My last day in Scottsdale was bittersweet. I drove through the neighborhood one final time, past the community pool where kids were splashing in the afternoon heat, past the landscaped common areas that Alina had improved with new desert plants and walking paths, past my old townhouse where the new owners were already moving furniture in. Tom and I met for one last coffee before I left town. We reminisced about the whole ordeal, laughing now about things that had seemed so serious at the time. "You know what the craziest part is?" Tom said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "If Brenda had just been a decent person, if she had done her HOA job without the power trips and the stealing, none of this would have happened. She could still be living here, still be running the board, probably getting thanked at every community meeting. She destroyed her own life by being greedy and mean." He was right. That was the real tragedy of the whole situation. Brenda Hutchins had been given authority and trust, and instead of using it to serve the community, she had used it to enrich herself and bully others. The consequences were entirely of her own making. I left Scottsdale the next morning, my car loaded with boxes, my GPS set for Austin. As I drove through the Arizona desert, watching the saguaro cacti give way to open highway, I felt grateful for how everything had turned out. I had stood up for myself, had found good people to help me, and had seen justice served. The story of the HOA president who stole groceries became one of those anecdotes I would tell at parties or when meeting new neighbors in Austin. It always got a reaction, a mix of shock and amusement. People could not believe that someone in authority would be so blatantly criminal, so confident that they would not get caught. But I knew better now. Power, even small power like running an HOA, can corrupt people who are already inclined toward selfishness and control. The only thing that stops them is accountability, and sometimes you have to be the one to demand it. Austin turned out to be a great move. The job was challenging in all the right ways. The city had amazing food and music, and I found a great apartment complex with reasonable management and no HOA drama whatsoever. I still got my groceries delivered, and they always arrived safely at my door. Sometimes I would check the Meadowbrook Estates Facebook group, just to see how the old neighborhood was doing. The posts were mostly mundane, reminders about garbage collection schedules, announcements about community events, the occasional debate about pool rules. It was exactly what an HOA community group should be, boring and functional. Tom sent me updates every few months. He was still on the HOA board, still working to keep things running smoothly. He told me that Alina had implemented a term limit policy for board presidents to prevent anyone from accumulating too much power again. It seemed like a smart move. 4 years after I left Scottsdale, I got an unexpected email from Jessica Morneau. She was reaching out because she had just taken on a case that reminded her of mine. Another HOA president, this time in Phoenix, had been caught embezzling money from the Community Reserve Fund. The homeowners had hired Jessica to pursue civil remedies, and she wanted permission to reference my case as precedent. I gave her permission immediately and asked her to keep me updated. The idea that our case against Brenda might help other people hold corrupt HOA officials accountable felt like the right kind of legacy. Jessica successfully represented those Phoenix homeowners, getting them full restitution plus damages. The HOA president in that case was also criminally convicted and served jail time. Jessica told me that having a clear precedent from our case made everything smoother, both in court and in settlement negotiations. I never heard what ultimately happened to Brenda Hutchins after she moved to Tucson. I did not search for her on social media, did not look up any public records, did not try to find out if she had turned her life around or continued down a problematic path. It was not my concern anymore. What I did carry forward was the knowledge that standing up for yourself matters, that documentation and evidence are crucial, and that sometimes the people in positions of authority are the ones who need to be held accountable the most. Those lessons served me well in Austin, in my career, and in my personal life. The Ring doorbell camera from my Scottsdale townhouse ended up in my Austin apartment. It still works perfectly, still sends me notifications when someone approaches my door. But now it just captures food deliveries arriving safely, neighbors stopping by to say hello, and the occasional Amazon package. No more HOA presidents stealing groceries. No more power trips or retaliation. Just normal, boring, peaceful life. And after everything I had been through, boring and peaceful sounded absolutely perfect. Looking back on the whole experience now, from the comfortable distance of time and geography, I can see how it shaped me. I am more assertive now, more willing to document problems and seek help when needed. I am also more aware of how institutions, even small ones like HOAs, can become vehicles for abuse when the wrong people are in charge. But I am also more appreciative of good leadership and honest people. Alina stepping up to reform the Meadowbrook Estates, HOA. Tom joining the board to make sure things stayed on track. Jessica fighting for her clients with skill and passion. These were the people who made the difference. They showed that systems can change, that accountability matters, and that one person standing up can create ripples that lead to real reform. The groceries that Brenda Hutchins stole probably cost her $250,000 when you factor in the settlement, her legal fees, lost income during her jail time, and the ongoing consequences to her reputation and employability. It was a steep price to pay for some organic steaks and specialty coffee. I hope she learned something from it. I hope she understands now why what she did was wrong, why abusing power has consequences, and why stealing from people you are supposed to serve is a particularly egregious betrayal. But whether she learned those lessons or not, the system worked. She was held accountable, the victims were compensated, and the community moved on under better leadership. As for me, I am thriving in Austin. My career is going well, and I have not had a single problem with stolen deliveries or HOA drama. My doorbell camera sits peacefully on my apartment door, recording nothing more exciting than the UPS driver leaving packages, and the occasional neighbor asking to borrow a cup of sugar. And every time a grocery delivery arrives safely, every time I bring in my bags without incident, I feel a small sense of satisfaction. I stood up for myself. I gathered evidence. I found good legal help. I followed through even when it was difficult and uncomfortable. And in the end, justice was served. That is the real story behind the HOA president who stole my groceries. Not just about the theft itself, but about what happened when someone finally said enough and demanded accountability. It is a story about documentation, persistence, and the importance of not letting people in power abuse that power unchecked. And if my experience helps even one person stand up to their own HOA Karen, if it gives someone the courage to document problems and seek legal remedies, then all the stress and frustration and drama was worth it. Because that is how systems change, one person at a time, one case at a time, one stolen grocery delivery leading to criminal convictions and civil reform. The end result was not just my $10,000 settlement or Brenda's jail time. It was a better HOA, stronger policies, and a community that learned the importance of oversight and accountability. It was Tom becoming a board member to make sure future residents would not go through what we went through. It was Alina implementing term limits and oversight procedures. It was Jessica using our case to help other victims. That is the legacy of those stolen groceries, and it is one I can be proud of. Not because I wanted to destroy anyone or sought revenge, but because I stood up for what was right and followed through until justice was served. Sometimes that is all you can do, and sometimes, if you are lucky, it is enough to make a real difference.